Good morning. It's a real honor to be at the TEDxMidAtlantic this morning, and I think even more so because the first person in my life who I've heard the name Ted to was my grandfather, Ted Salinas. He would have been 77 years old this month. Unfortunately, he died 5 years ago. He would have been very proud to be here. Because of my grandparents, my grandfather, my grandmother, who have made enormous sacrifices, that's why I'm here. My grandfather immigrated legally to the US in 1984, worked as a security guard. When he became an American citizen in 1990, they couldn't pronounce his Tagalog name, Teofilo, so he changed it to Ted, after Ted Danson from Cheers. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name, so he figured that was the way to go. Because grandparents are not allowed to petition their grandchildren, he found another way to get his eldest grandson in America. He saved up $4,500, which is a lot of money for a security guard, $4,500 to get me to America. And to get papers like a passport and a green card. This was in 1993. Then 4 years later, like any 16-year-old, I go to the DMV to get my driver's permit, and that's when I realized that the green card that my grandfather Ted had given me was actually not real, that it was fake, that I'm what people call an illegal alien, that I'm not supposed to be here. But luckily for me, the following year, I discovered this thing called journalism. My English teacher said I was asking too many annoying questions and I should do this thing called journalism. So I went to a journalism camp, and it was really interesting, a shock, really, to see my name. You know, when you write a story, there's a thing called a byline. So to see my byline, you know, on a piece of paper. I was 17 years old, and I thought, wait up a second, well, if I don't have the right papers to be in America, what if I'm on the paper? I thought maybe I could just, just write my way into America. So I started doing that when I was 17. The first news story I ever covered was actually a fire that ended up happening right on the block where I grew up. So that's why I got sent to cover the fire. And in the next 14 years, I ended up writing for the San Francisco Chronicle. I worked for 5 years at the Washington Post, living here in Washington, D.C., just a few blocks from here. And it was a little bit kind of like Catch Me If You Can meets Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. Looking at the Washington Monument, working just a few blocks from the White House, going to press conferences at Capitol Hill, interviewing Mike Huckabee and Newt Gingrich, writing about politics, given that my life has been played political football with all my life, and knowing that the Washington Monument and the Capitol and all these buildings in this great, powerful city didn't belong to me, and that they weren't at all, had nothing to do with me. So after about 14 years of doing this, I kind of figured enough was enough. I landed the biggest assignment of my life, writing assignment, was writing for The New Yorker, profiling Mark Zuckerberg. And I learned everything. I learned everything I know about writing from reading The New Yorker. So this was, to me, the assignment. And at one point, I was interviewing Mark. I had about 5 interviews with him. And Mark is a pretty sociable guy. He actually, at one point, turned to me and said, "Jose, dude, where are you from?" I think that's when I realized that I was kind of done. I could have just simply said, "I'm from Mountain View," which is right next door to Palo Alto, where we were at. But where you're from, at that point in my life, when I thought I had succeeded my way into America, contributing to my country that I call my home, paying taxes, trying to be an upstanding citizen, and yet I can't go to Mexico for a friend's wedding. I haven't seen my mom for 19 years because I can't go to the Philippines because I won't be able to come back. So that was the moment that I realized that I'd had enough. and that I was going to come forward and do it in the most public way possible. It's a horrible photo. Hey. Which was in the pages of the New York Times, and wrote an essay called My Life as an Undocumented Immigrant, and the headline was Outlaw. And this was really the first time in my career, in my writing, reporting career, that I've written about immigration. I spent 14 years ignoring it. And for the past year and a half, since that, 2 summers ago, I've gone to about 25 states. I'm going to Alabama on Monday. Done about 80 to 90 events with Democrats, Republicans, young people, older people. I was just in Illinois yesterday and then Wisconsin before that. And what's been fascinating to me is immigration is quite simply the most controversial yet least understood issue in America. People simply do not know how it works. And I can tell you that and outline that for you by kind of the 6 top questions that I get from people as I've traveled around the country and have become a walking uncomfortable conversation. Question number 1, so you're not Mexican? Not all undocumented people are from Mexico. Although my name is Jose Antonio Vargas, but that's because Spain went to the Philippines in 1521, stayed for 300 years and all that. But I don't want to get all history books on people. So you're not Mexican, and I tell them, no, I am not, and that actually not everybody who's undocumented is Mexican. 1 million of the 11 million undocumented people in this country are actually from Asia and Pacific Islander, like me, Philippines, China, Korea. About 800,000 from South America, 300,000 actually from Europe, undocumented French, Polish, Irish, German people. And actually, 65% of people who are here without papers, undocumented, have been here for more than 10 years. So unlike what you see sometimes on cable shows, we didn't just cross the border yesterday, ended up waiting for a job outside of Walmart. That's the first question. The second question, and this is a really interesting one. Why don't you just make yourself legal? Because I'm a masochist. And this is like so much more fun. Because I can't. There is no way. During the Iowa caucuses, I actually surprised Governor Romney by showing up to a rally in Cedar Rapids, holding that sign up. Thank you. I wasn't there to protest. I wasn't there to be disrespectful. I just wanted to say that I'm not an illegal alien. I am an American without papers. And this lovely, lovely man, William Oglesby, who's a Romney supporter, came to me and said, why don't you just make yourself legal? And I said, sir, I can't. I can't just marry my way into this like Sandra Bullock in The Proposal, because I happen to be gay. There's a thing called the Defense of Marriage Act. So even though I can get married in the state of New York where I live, or Massachusetts and Iowa, the federal government, which handles immigration, wouldn't recognize the marriage. But to me, that question really underscores that people don't know that when politicians say people like me should get in the back of the line, there is no line. If you told me where the line was in the corner of 13th and U, I'll see you there, like right now. But there's no line. The third question. That's an even more horrible picture. The third question is, do you think you belong in a special class of people who can break any law you want? This really mild-mannered, polite gentleman, Conrad Sassno, who's a lawyer, came to a civility roundtable that was hosted at my hometown in Mountain View, California, where I grew up. It's a great meeting because there were Republicans, there were Democrats. And he showed up with my New York Times essay in hand, underlined, which scared me. And then very politely, he came to me and said, Mr. Vargas, I don't understand how you think you can just get a driver's license from the state of Oregon when you're not supposed to. Like, if I did that, I'd be in jail. Like, do you think you're better than me? And he asked it in such a polite, curious way. He wasn't at all being disrespectful. And I said, sir, I got the license because the Washington Post said that I couldn't show up in Washington, D.C. without a driver's license, and I really wanted the job because I really wanted to pay taxes and I wanted to contribute. But more than that, people like me get licenses because I had to cover the Iowa caucuses, and there's no buses in Iowa. People like me get a license because, we got to drop off the kids to school. We have to get groceries, and we have to go to work. We get the license because, I have a big news. We're human beings like you. And he said, oh, I never thought about it like that before. And then a few months later, we talked on the phone, and he said he had written a letter to his congressman and his president, and said that we really need comprehensive immigration reform. And this is one of those questions that's really, to me, the most provocative, which is, what part of illegal don't you understand? We can talk about the legality aspect of it, which is that it's actually legally inaccurate to refer to somebody as an illegal, because to be in this country without papers is a civil offense, not a criminal one. We can talk about the fact that the term is really imprecise. As I stand here right now, there are tens of thousands of students across America who are here without papers. And I would hate to think that they're sitting in their classrooms listening to us talk about them and internalizing the word illegal. And really, to me, the biggest point is it's incredibly dehumanizing and pejorative, and comes with it so many different connotations. Negative, all of them. That we're criminals. That we're not supposed to be even, within the block that you live in or the school that you go to. Actions are illegal, never people. And something is terribly wrong when we refer to people as illegal. The other question is, why haven't you gotten deported? I do not know. I don't know if ICE, DHS is waiting outside for me, but I don't know why I haven't gotten deported. All I can tell you is in the past 4 years, 1 million people have been deported. In fiscal year 2011, nearly 400,000 people were deported, and not me. And other people, young people, who have come forward and have declared themselves undocumented and unafraid. I remember watching a YouTube video from Chicago of a group of kids, mostly Latinos in downtown Chicago, saying, we're undocumented and unafraid. And I'm sitting in an office in New York City thinking, how dare I not join them? What a coward I was for not saying anything. So that's one of the reasons why I came out, which is the last question. Why do people like me come out? Which is a really interesting phrase. I've come out twice in my life. The first time was when I was a junior in high school. We were watching the documentary, The Life and Times of Harvey Milk. And one of the last few lines was when Harvey Milk said, if a bullet should enter my brain, let it break through a closet door. And I was sitting in the back of room 101, and I don't know what happened to me. I raised my hand and I said, I'm gay. And I ran out of the room. And my girlfriend found out during brunch. That was the first time. The second time took 14 years longer. And people like me are coming out. And here's the interesting thing. We're not really coming out. We're just letting you in. So when I haven't gotten deported, I contacted the editor of Time magazine and said, can I write a cover story on why I haven't gotten deported? Thankfully, Rick Stengel, in all of his compassionate heart, agreed. And more than that, he let us have a cover photo of 36 undocumented young people from 15 different countries. There's Gabi Pacheco of Ecuador, who has 3 college degrees from Miami-Dade College, and she wants to be a special education teacher. There's Roy Naim, who was born in Israel, and he got here when he was 4. And he's been volunteering for nonprofits his whole life. There's Cesar Vargas, who graduated law school, and who's one of 3 lawyers right now who are actually trying to get their states to admit them to practice law. And the guy next to me, to my left, is Victor from Alabama, who crossed the border from Mexico when he was 6 years old. And he wants to be a teacher. And right now in the state of Alabama, Alabama actually out-Arizonaed Arizona, passing the toughest immigration law in the country, where it's a felony to do a business with the government, like going to college or getting a driver's license. So here's really the big question. More and more people like me will come out. Because sometimes you risk your life in order to free yourself from it. So the question is, what are you going to do? All the American citizens, people sitting here, how do we solve this issue? How are you going to help us? Thank you so much for having me here today.